before we decided to take the conversation here to your lovely pitch side of business side of campus, let me put it that way, with all these pitches. I mean, look, I can tell you, this pitch it has better playing quality than the ones we play our national team football. And I'm not even capping. This is the truth, because I've been to Baba Yara multiple times. I've been to the Accra Sports Stadium multiple times. We don't even have this quality pitch. I mean, this is one of how many?
8.
8 pitches?
Yeah.
Are they all full size or?
3 full size, 1 9-a-side, 4 7-a-side.
Wow. And I noticed that to get from where the classrooms are to here, which is where the residence is as well.
For the boys, the girls stay over there.
It's quite a walk. How big is this whole land altogether when you got it? Because it seems like it's a whole campus.
About 60 acres.
60 acres?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we have a lot more development to do. So now we're focusing on the next stage of development for the campus here. We have a lot of ideas.
Yeah. I mean, and building 8 pitches here, that must have been a lot of work, I believe.
Yeah, that was the first time the Mansour group supported us, because they own Mantrack, which is the Caterpillar dealership here. So that's as far back as 2013 that they stepped in. And
so you've been partnering with Mansour for a long time?
That was like a one-off thing where actually the guy who's the new group CEO, Dan Dickinson, he's on the global board of Caterpillar.
Right.
But he's been with us for a long time.
Yes.
So when we wanted to build the pitches, then he called through Caterpillar and he got to Lovely Mansour.
Okay.
So I didn't actually meet, but we had a couple of phone calls, and he was like, look, I was trying to build one more pitch.
Okay.
And he said, okay, how long do you need the machines for? So I just tried my luck. I said, 6 months. He said, no problem.
Wow.
So when they send the machines, I told them, you build pitches until until the 6 months is up.
As long as you can.
Yes. So I was planning to have 1 more, 3, and then we ended up with 8.
Wow.
And then, you know, like each year I'll send him a happy Christmas note or appreciation. He'll always reply. And then later on, so there was a contact there, but it wasn't like a formal partnership.
Yeah.
And then later on, the same Dan Dickinson said, oh, the rumor is that the Mansours want to buy a Premier League club. Why don't we talk to them about what we're doing, for the reasons I said before about stability and growth. So Ludwig came here and he got it immediately. And then he said, look, no matter what happens, I'll build a Right to Dream in Egypt.
Wow.
And then if you guys can persuade me that there's a bigger business model, then maybe we'll go for the whole thing. So we spent a year talking about the bigger idea while we were planning Egypt, and then at the end of the year, his father came in at the end, and I think that was more about character assessment and other things than the business model. And they said, okay, this is going to be our football project, global football project.
That's amazing. At the moment, how many players do you have in this, both boys and girls, in this Right to Dream?
About 120 here.
About 120. And you know what the ratio is?
About 20 girls. So I really want to work on expanding the girls' side, yeah.
These are the very pictures where Mohamed Kudus, Kamaldeen Sulemana, David Akam, Thomas Japan, listen, I'm not even copying when I say you've literally built a national team for Ghana. Because at any given time, right now, it's impossible to have a Black Stars gathering without Right to Dream graduates. And yes, these are not just peripheral players. These are players that are actually making huge impact. Some of the best there is on not just that, even on the continent. And I think you're probably on your way to producing a first African footballer league. These pitches, for me, it's one thing that gives me a great idea about how serious you are about this academy. Because listen, even with our own national team, we can't even get quality pitches to play on. But let's talk about some of the talents that have come through here briefly, and then I would just say, and then we move on to the San Diego project and wrap it up. If you look at all the talent that has passed through here, all the years that you've had this academy, who would you say is probably the most talented on a football pitch?
The best player I ever saw here was Kelvin Ofori.
What happened to him?
He signed in Germany. Now he's playing in Slovakia. But he was
What made him so special?
He was
skillful.
Yeah. He was. I don't like it when people call me telling me that they have a Messi type player but he was a left-footed in that style. But it changes, different stages, different players develop, and then what matters is when you're fully grown, like how it is. But if you talk about academy football, that's the best player. Even at Man U, I never saw a player as good as Kelvin Ofori. And then Kamal, like leading up to when he left, and then his start in Essien is unbelievable. He still will be unbelievable. Like when it settles down, like that's a world-class player. Yeah. And then Kudus didn't get in on the scouting system. He came to play against us.
That's how he got in.
Yeah.
Tell me the story.
No, he came with Strong Tower to play against us, and he just finished everybody.
Wow.
So it was like, okay. And I think he'd been in the system, but he hadn't made it all the way. I can't remember the detail. Yeah. But I remember standing right where your camera is, and he was playing here.
On this very pitch?
This pitch, when he was young, and I was like, woo. And then he was invited in. And then in the early years...
Do you have a lot of those kids? Kids that... So that's a special case.
It's not often, yeah. And then in the early years, Yao Yaboa was unbelievable player. And he can play anywhere. He's like Kojo Asamoah. He can play anywhere.
Midfield, 10.
Yeah. So I'm very happy for him. He's very happy with his life. And he's doing great. He scored the winning goal in the MLS Cup final. Yeah. But I still think there's more to come from him. I think he'll become more dominant in the MLS. And I hope to see him. He does play left back in America, and so I think the left back position is a little bit competitive in the Black Stars as well.
Yeah. So that's it. I mean, that's a fair point that you make. Also about Kamaldeen Sulemana, because I thought, quite frankly, that he was. I mean, at FC National, he was unplayable. Like, he was explosive. That has sort of taken a little bit of... What do you think has happened there? I don't think that his development has accelerated at the same rate that he was going when he was at FC Northland.
No, I think, it's an old expression, form is temporary, class is permanent.
True.
And for Kamal, like, if you watch Jeremy Doku, if you watch Vinicius Jr., in training, their potential, you compare it to Kamal, you're talking about a player in the same ballpark.
Right.
Obviously, in certain phases of their development, they pushed a little bit, but, with modern day, most footballers will still be playing when they're 36, 37. So he's right at the start of the journey still. And he has everything that it takes. So even I watched the game against Central African Republic. If you look at positioning, timing of runs, everything, he was the one who was supposed to score. So of course everybody will focus on the actual finishing, but the real thing is right time, right position, all that type of stuff. He's a world-class player.
Yeah. And Kudus was the one. Kamaldeen, we didn't see him in the youth teams. Kudus was the one we saw a lot in the youth teams, under 17, under 20. He and Sadiq Ibrahim. Kudus was quite chubby at some point, it looked like. And
that's your words, not my words.
It's my word. And to be fair, in that under 17, there were a lot of people that thought that he wasn't quite pulling his weight. And I remember, I don't know if it's an interview that you did or something. I see somewhere that you, the very first day, I think someone might have raised the same concern with you or something, and you told the person in the face that, look at this kid, he would go right to the very top. And that you did have some of those comments about him at some point, didn't you?
That he was chubby?
About Kudus not necessarily being maybe slightly big for his age?
Kudus has like size 13 feet, and he's not very tall. So he's
size 13?
Yeah. So he's like genetically, he's a unique athlete.
Yeah.
And you have to be, this is where I think Right to Dream is doing a good job, that we've brought in best-in-class practice. We share it among our group so that we don't fall into stereotypical comments about players.
Yeah.
You have to take, especially at that top level, every athlete as an individual case. You have to be patient with the process. We can definitely be too fast in Ghana to write a player off. And then the other fact is that we develop our players to be successful in Europe. And then from that, they transition into the Black Stars.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the players playing in the junior national teams, they're developed in the Ghana system. So when they play African football, they know everything about African football. Whereas our guys are playing in Europe on a regular basis from a young age, which gives them the platform to establish themselves in the Premier League and other things. And then from there, obviously, they'll have a big impact for Ghana, but we kind of do things the other way around.
Yeah.
So like we wouldn't really listen to any analysis on how our players were doing in the youth national teams and take it too seriously. We obviously scout the games ourselves and then make our own mind, help the player with some reflections on that. But I think every parent in Ghana would want their kid to establish themselves in Europe first and then tackle the Black Stars, rather than focus on the youth national teams but not really know how to play in Europe. And generally the transition of Ghanaian players into Europe over the last few years has not been too strong, and that's because the style of play is differentiated so much now in Europe with Pep's kind of revolution that a lot of people are copying. It's very hard for a young African player, if he's not hearing the terminology and getting the coaching from, like, even from 10 years old.
Yeah.
If you're not getting that, and then you just step into Europe at 18 and you hear a coach talking about all of those terminologies, imagine the kind of pressure to try and adapt to all of that. If you speak to Michael, Essien and Derek and others, when they arrived in Europe, it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was much more like simple basics, so you could adapt. But now you come in and you'll be talking about all phases of the game, and you're counter-pressing, and if a centre-back receives the ball on his weaker foot, then we're going to press with this direction. If he receives it on the other. And so as a young midfielder, let's say you play 8, and then early on, and then the coach goes back and says, I don't think this guy can learn, which is an equally ignorant comment on the European side. But that's how it goes. So we just want to prepare our kids for success.
I mean, Kudus is already really good, a very special talent. But from where you sit, just how far do you think he can go? He seemed to have early troubles at Ajax. I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. I thought he should have been playing the whole time. I don't know what the issue was with Eric Ten Hag. He's shown at West Ham that he's an absolutely fantastic player. When you look at his journey, the trajectory he's going, how soon or how much longer before we see him being maybe at Real Madrid or one of those big clubs?
Well, the one thing about Kudus is he knows what's best for himself.
Yeah.
He's managed his career very successfully, and so he knows.
You don't manage these kids, right?
No. They have their own agents. Sometimes they do it themselves, so he'll make good decisions. And it's not for me to comment the right time for him to step and everything else. But yeah, you mentioned Real Madrid. For me, I think the right side of the Real Madrid team, if you have Kylian at 9, Vinny on the left, that kind of different, because he's not like a raw pace guy like those guys, he's a different style. I think he can play for any team in the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's talk about San Diego FC. And even before we talk about that, I want to pick your opinion on this. Now, apart from the fact that you're developing a lot of players that are going on and doing well in Europe and coming back, also helping our national team, you're also doing the same thing for coaches as well. I mean, Ghanaian coaches. And from the top of my head, you had Lai Kirsten, you had Didi Dramani, you had Otto, Addo, who is now the Black Stars coach. You now have Michael Essien. Derek Boateng is working for you as a scout. CK as well has worked with Right to Dream in the past. He also coached the national team. I mean, this is wonderful. At what point did you decide that, let me give a lot of these Ghanaian ex-players the opportunity to coach?
They decided to coach, and they are good coaches.
Well, you gave them the opportunity.
Yeah, but it's natural. They're good coaches.
True.
You know, and
Makes it easier.
We talked about it with Henrik, the Brazilian, like his market value. It's the same thing in relation to coaches. Why are Brazilian and Argentinian coaches coming to Europe and making it, but African coaches are not? So it's just simple. They're good coaches. End of story.
Yeah.
And how other people choose to see the world is not our problem.
Yeah. Do you? Otto is now the Black Stars head coach. Do you? He worked at FC Barcelona for a year.
Longer.
Longer.
Yeah.
Longer than a year.
Yeah.
Did you?
And I offered him the head coach job in Essien as well.
At what point?
Later on.
Before he left FCN?
No,
Or
when he
while
went
you were
back to
at
Dortmund.
Dortmund?
Yeah.
Before the World Cup?
Yeah.
And he said no to that?
Yeah.
Too? Wow. They are, you know, Otto he's a unique figure. He's very obsessed with football. Do you remember how you got connected to him to come to FCN?
The first time I saw Otto play was African Cup of Nations 2002 in Ghana?
2000.
2000.
2000 in Ghana.
And, you know, I knew all the Ghanaian players. And so he was one of the first foreigners, you know, because he's quite German. I was like, where's this guy coming from? I think he had a Rasta and like we didn't know him in the same way. So I remember him that far back. And then I've tracked all of the, let's say, Ghanaian heritage guys as well, monitored their careers. George Boateng is a good example. Eric Addo. Even in the Danish media, we have Francis Dicko. So I track all of those Ghanaian heritage and monitor their careers, as well as all the local coaches. So Otto was always like an interesting case. And then when I was thinking about FCN, I said, who will understand the European mindset and the Ghanaian mindset? And, you know, Denmark, border to Germany, they're different, but some similarities. So he was just an obvious candidate. So it was like I didn't know him, but it was a headhunting approach to say who's the perfect profile
at this point.
And so I just called his agent, and then, you know, we met, we talked about strategy, and then we did the deal.
That's amazing, because, you know, Otto is one guy. He's getting the job, especially after the way the first stint went. When he didn't stay on as a permanent coach, the conversation was always like, why is it? You know, now you're telling me that he even turned down an FCN job, which makes me believe what he said even more, that he just wasn't ready at the time to leave Dortmund. But now he's come back, he's doing a really decent job. You've also got Michael Essien, still with the coaching staff at FCN now. I saw his title, individual player coach. What does that mean?
Well, the way that we do things at FCN is that we balance the individual needs of the player versus the needs of the team.
Okay.
So, of course, our players love to be with us, but they're thinking about other things as well.
Yeah.
So if they see that our only focus is how to win as FCN, which is how most coaches at most clubs think, and maybe like if we think you can help us at right back, we'll play you there even if it won't help your career.
Okay.
We see it another way where, okay, we have to really focus on where do you want to get to, how can we help you get there, and then at the same time, how can you help the club to progress. So that's Michael's job, is to look at the development of the individual player and
align their goals to the team's goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not aligned.
Yep.
So help to make the decision about, okay, like we had a player, Mohamed Diomande, who's at Rangers now, and for some time we needed him to play left back.
Is it a kid we wanted to play for Ghana?
Yeah, Ghana wanted him. But in that situation, we needed him to play left back. Okay. He wants to play either 8 or 10. So how do you balance those two things? Because it's natural for a kid, if he thinks he's an 8 and he's desperate to make it, and he's like, okay, they're playing me a left back, nobody's going to see me.
Yeah.
When Diomande left, I asked him, who's the single biggest influence in your career? He said, Michael.
Wow.
So how to manage all of those periods. And, you know, sometimes Michael played right back for Chelsea, you know, a lot of things. So those experiences, he's uniquely positioned.
Yeah. And he's a very interesting character. Michael doesn't like involving himself with, he's a very quiet guy. But when it comes to, I saw an interview on the Right to Dream, I think, YouTube channel where each of the kids was getting a turn to interview Michael.
Yeah.
And he looked like a completely different person talking to the kids than when Michael meets anybody else outside. And
He doesn't like you media guys. That's
he doesn't.
That's what you're trying to say.
He doesn't like any media at all. I was at the World Cup in Doha, in Qatar. I watched the Argentina and Croatia semi-final with Michael. We had a lovely conversation throughout the game. After that, I asked Michael for an interview. He says, "My friend, I'm not going to do it." Tom, the future of Right to Dream without you now.
Did you say without me?
Did I say without you?
Yeah.
Without you as CEO.
Yeah.
It's not in the hands of your very good friend Dickinson. But more importantly, Right to Dream is growing bigger. Ghana, Essien, so Denmark, Egypt. Now you're expanding to America as well. You're taking the same principles there. But beyond everything else, you're building this one in a very unique San Diego. It's got, I read somewhere, the part ownership with the Native American people. I mean, tell me all about that. That project. It looks like a huge project because it doesn't appear to me, and I've read on this, that any other MLS clubs has any module close to what you guys are building.
Yeah, it's true. You know, it was the Mansour's vision. You know, Ludwig came up with this phrase early on. He said, "Americans just get it." Like who we are, Americans just get it. The student-athlete model, and the idea that everybody has the right to dream.
Yeah.
You know, aligned with the original essence of the American dream. No matter where you come from, you can make it to the top. So that was his vision, because very early on, the idea was, okay, let's buy a team in England. And then once he got into the business, he's like, it's going to work better in America. So I spent 2.5 years going everywhere in America, looking at so many projects. We had a project in Baltimore that we nearly got close to, but eventually the opportunity was in San Diego for an MLS franchise, and then with the Sequan tribe and their chairman Cody, who's a visionary, and the fact that they have this amazing reservation land where we can, you know, it's their land, so we can build what we want there. He fell in love with the Right to Dream vision, actually after he met Hosseini Buddha and one Ghanaian graduate called Adelaide Ama, who's one of our best graduates.
Oh, okay.
And when he met them, he said, okay, I want to have a Right to Dream in San Diego on my land. So, you know, everything in America is big money, so it's a huge investment, and the school there and the residential there is going to be something unique.